All right, I think we can get started. If people join as we keep going, that's fine. Welcome everyone. This is our first webinar of the day, so thank you for joining us. Paul Nutting is here from MassGIS as the outreach coordinator. Very thankful to have him here to start off, give us a nice overview. This will be kind of driven by your questions and comments, so if there's something specific that you want to know about or learn about, please feel free to use the raise hand or put it in the chat or even the Q&A. So it'll be pretty interactive as much as you guys want or desire it to be. In the meantime, this is being recorded, so if you want to go back and look at it, it will be available on YouTube. So in the meantime, thank you all for being here, and I hope you guys enjoy this and any other sessions that we have today, and I'll turn it over to Paul.
Hi, everybody. As Melissa said, my name's Paul Nutting. I work at MassGIS, which is the state mapping agency. I've been there for 25 years. At the beginning of my career there, we used to run our own GIS Day event up at the State House. And that was back at a time when most people didn't really know what GIS was. So that was the reason why we ran the event, was to get the powers that be and the people who have the purse strings, if you will, to realize the usefulness of GIS. But we've come a long way since then, and most people do realize the utility of GIS mapping. I didn't really prepare a specific presentation for you today because I didn't really know who the audience would be, and I really wanted it to be more of a Q&A, and I would be happy to answer people's questions. But one of the first things that I did want to do, just as sort of a little bit of a preview, was to show you some of the resources that we have on our website. I'm going to, let's see, find this to show you. All righty. Can everybody see my screen here, hopefully?
All set.
Yeah, so, and also just to let you know, I don't use Zoom at all. In the office, we use Microsoft Teams, and before that, we were using WebEx. So I might have to do a little bit of poking around here. But anyway, this is our, the MassGIS website, built on the relatively new mass.gov platform. The mass.gov platform doesn't give us a lot of flexibility as far as images and things like that. So we've really had to kind of slim down what our older website used to look like. But anyway, this is sort of the main crux of the website here. You can download data from our website for use in your own GIS software. One of the things that I will be showing you is our Oliver interactive online mapping tool. We have several other online mapping tools that are sort of single purpose, whereas Oliver allows you to view virtually all of our data. We also have a whole section that I worked on at the beginning of the pandemic, information for cities and towns, and then also a section about representative projects that we've done over the years at MassGIS. I'll quickly start just by showing you the resources for the municipalities. The flexibility that the mass.gov website gave us with this new page type was I was able to take existing pages and make them more, I guess, identifiable by what the topic is. So anyway, I'll just scan through these quickly. I'm not going to read all of them. I should also mention that about 150 cities and towns across the Commonwealth have a dedicated GIS staff person in the city or town whose title is, GIS director, GIS technician. But I know that Southborough doesn't have that, and maybe several people in the town actually use GIS, like Melissa, but she just uses that as part of her job, as opposed to being the dedicated GIS staff. Melissa told me that we have several realtors who have joined us. So one of the things that I think that they would be interested in, is in addition to everyone else, and this is actually our most popular map on the website, is our interactive property map. Many years ago, we started to assemble assessor parcel data for every city and town. We do a lot of work for the state 911 department. Before we started doing that work, Verizon was the entity that did that work, because virtually every address had a phone at it. And as you well know, nowadays, most people, well, I shouldn't say most people, but many people don't have a landline. So we took over sort of the addressing from Verizon. And the best places to get addresses initially was from assessor parcel data. So we created a standard for assessor parcel data, and then we paid vendors to go out to every city and town and take their existing parcel data, be it in a manuscript format, meaning, just paper, or maybe it was in an AutoCAD format, or ideally it was in some sort of GIS file. But anyway, we paid those vendors to bring every city and town up to the standard. And now the state 911 department requires every city and town to submit an annual update to the parcel data. There are some caveats to that, but they give out grants to the police department for the 911. And if the towns aren't complying with these submissions, they don't get the grants. So anyway, I'll tell you quickly how to use this. And at some point, I will post all of these links once I figure out how to put up a post. But anyway, you can type an address right up here in the upper right, find a place or an address. Or you can use these buttons over here. Or I like to use the wheel, the scroll wheel on my mouse. So what I'll do is I will zoom in to Southborough. Yeah, how did he get to Southborough so quick? Well, I've worked, like I said, for the state mapping agency for 25 years, so pretty much know where every city and town is. So you could give me a map that didn't have labels of cities and towns, just had all the 351 outlines, and I could probably identify about 80% of them. But anyway, we can just zoom in, and I'll just randomly click on a parcel that has a structure on it, just so that we have some identifying information. So again, I just click on the parcel, and then I get a little pop-up. It tells me the address, it tells me who the owner is. Looks like Southborough's been really diligent in getting us recent data, because this is from fiscal year 2020. And it gives you some other information about the property. So this is good for identifying ownership and proximity to other parcels, but it's most useful for, going to other towns, or, we have this information statewide. So that is the property viewer. I should also show you Oliver, which is our online interactive map that has virtually all of the data that MassGIS has created. And I use the term data layer when I really should be using the term map, because that's what really, what most people think about as a map. But as you saw in that parcel viewer, all of that information that you saw about that specific parcel, that is all in a database, and the the lines that show the outline for that parcel is a way to show where that data is. But the database is really the sort of the crux of the map, or the data layer, or the data. So this is Oliver, our interactive online mapping tool. One of the things that we started to do with Oliver probably about 8 years ago is we started to create what we call a Muni Mapper. Cities and towns that had no online mapping or any sort of mapping at all, once we started the parcel data project, we figured it would be useful to create for them a mapping tool so that they could at least see the parcel data, along with maybe some other layers that were important for people at town hall. So for instance, Melissa on the Conservation Commission, she needs to know where the wetlands are and where the where the endangered species habitats and things like that are. So we created this tool, and we actually made one for Southborough. But in the meantime, Southborough has has contracted with People GIS to have their own sort of commercial mapping product. So I know I'm flipping through a lot of different things, but I just want to show you the various online mapping resources that are available to you. So I already showed you the parcel viewer that we have, and then I showed you the Muni Mapper that we made for Southborough, which probably doesn't get much use because now you have this commercial product created by People GIS. But I did want to show you Oliver, and I just wanted to stop for a second to see, Melissa, has there been any questions yet? Have I been going too fast?
There hasn't been any questions, but I did put the links to the maps that you've shown in the chat box.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So for anyone who has also joined, if you have a question, this is meant to be interactive. So either put it in the chat or use the raise hand feature, please.
Okay, so this is Oliver, our online interactive map. The technology is pretty old. However, I've been told, and as we all know in government, sometimes things we're told don't come to fruition in the timeline that we initially had hoped for. But anyway, I'm told that there is going to be money in the budget this year to update Oliver. Some of the upgrades that I'm hoping for are what we call draw tools. You've created the map, and now you want to be able to draw something on it, a note or maybe a little text box or something like that. You can't do that now in Oliver, but hopefully with the upgrade, we're going to be able to do that. But anyway, here is Oliver. When you open it up, it'll start out like this. And since we're dealing with folks in Southborough, I'm just going to start typing in Southborough. Again, one of the limitations of this older version is that you have to use all capitals. As you can see, the there's all capitals in this list, so I had to start typing in all caps. And then I'll just click Southborough, and it will zoom to Southborough. One of the things that I should also mention is that we have some default layers that are that appear without you adding them, because we're assuming that people want to see these layers. If you see a yellow exclamation point next to one of these layers, it means that it has what we call a scale dependency, which means that it won't draw at certain scales. And in this case, it won't draw because we're too far zoomed out. So again, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and still too far. And now things are starting to draw. I should also mention that these symbols that you see here next to the layer indicate what type of layer it is. So for instance, this polygon here, this tax parcels for query, it's a polygon. It's something that has a specific area. Whereas these other three layers are what we call tile and cached layers. So they're really just pictures. There's no information that you can get out of the layer itself other than just viewing it online, or perhaps we've added a label to it. Most, or I should say all of the other layers come out of these folder sets here. Depending on your screen resolution and the size of your monitor, et cetera, you may have to resize some of these windows. So just like with other software packages, if you hover on the the dividing line, you can expand these things. I should also mention that there's a help document here that will tell you all of the features in Oliver. So for instance, let's see. I'll just use the example of Melissa and what she might be interested in. So I'm going to add this open space. I started just by typing in a keyword here. So I'm going to add open space by level of protection. So as you can see, some of the areas that were green before are sort of a darker green now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this open space by level of protection, which I just added. And I'm going to change the opacity, which means I can see through it. And then just click away. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this identify tool here, this eye with the blue circle, to then click on one of those open space parcels. And what it does is it tells me, it brings up two sort of query results. One is the open space by level of protection, and the other is tax parcels for query, which was one of the default layers that was in there. So I'm going to click on the open space by level of protection. And of course, I'm going to get a glitch. If something doesn't happen immediately, you're better off to just try it again. So I mentioned Oliver is old technology. There we go. And again, I'm going to drag this out so that I can see more of the information without scrolling through. So this is called Beals Preserve. It's owned by the Southborough Open Space Foundation. And then there's other information out of the database that we can see. The primary purpose is conservation. There is public access. The level of protection is P, which means perpetuity. It's like, how does he know all that information? He's just reading off these things. Well, I can right click again over here on the table of contents and click on view metadata. And what that does is it brings up a page from our website that tells you all about that particular data layer. And more importantly, it brings me down to the tabular information. So that site name that we saw before with the Beals open space site, and then the fee owner as far as the conservation trust. And then there was the primary purpose, conservation. I could go here to see the codes. Public access, there was public access. Level of protection was perpetuity. Again, behind all these links would be those definitions. I could also select multiple things by using this tool here and making a polygon. So I click once and then make a little box or any sort of type of figure, and then double click to close it. And I selected all of those parcels, those assessor parcels, and now here they all are, and all the information about those parcels. I can export all of those too into a table if I wanted to, into an Excel table or a CSV to then use as maybe a mailing list or whatever other reason you might have. Another useful feature I should show you about Oliver, and this might be even more useful if I added in some other stuff. So let me just add in some endangered species habitats. So let's add in the biomap. Okay, there's no biomap stuff here. Let's add in some endangered species habitats. Well, I'm not seeing any of those here either. So let me try to find another part of town where there might be some of those other features. Let's see. Well, I'm not really seeing many of those other things, but I used the pan tool. I should have told you that. But one of the other things I wanted to show you was this permalink here, this star tool. If you click on that and then right click on this permalink, you can copy the link address. And essentially what it does is it's copying this map. So you could then send it to somebody else and say, hey, check out this map. And then they open it up and it will open up just like you see here, but then it's also interactive. They can start doing other things to the map. Let's see, are there any questions yet, Melissa?
There are two. So the first question was, People GIS is not as complete as we would like it for us in the building department. If I understand it right, we can simply use your Muni Mapper. And I did do a quick response in that the Oliver might be a better resource, but also asking what specifically they might be looking for.
Yeah, that's really the crux of the question is, what are you looking for? I'm assuming maybe in the building department, you might want different measurements on the map. Some towns do have measurements on their maps. And as I had mentioned, we had paid the vendors to go to the cities and towns and create the assessor parcel maps. Then we discovered that some towns weren't keeping the maps up to date. And so then we did a whole nother round of what we called parcel enhancements. And some of those enhancements were to actually add dimensional text onto the maps, because maybe the pre-existing maps before we came along and paid to have them upgraded had those parcel dimensions. However, that wasn't part of the first contract. So the second contract, we put those on, but I'm not sure in so far if that was one of the things that they had asked for. But anyway, do we have any clarification on what the things they want to see?
It was acreage and some streets are not labeled. We have found in People GIS. So that might be something for the building department. You have to open the property card. And I can, Julianne, if you want to set up a time to go over that, I'm happy to do that with you in terms of the People GIS layers to understand that a little bit better and where you can find that information. And then the other question was, how often does this get updated? It looks like some of the newer buildings that we have in town aren't included yet.
Oh, well, that's a great question. So as far as the building structures go, I'll zoom in just to get a better view of these structures. I'm also going to switch the base map, which is down here in the lower right, to the latest aerial photo. And then I'm also going to change the, if I can, because it's a tile layer, change the opacity of the structures. As you can see, I'm changing it so I can see through to the actual aerial photo. And I'll find a sort of a sweet spot where I can still see the structure outline and still see the ortho photo. So I'm going to try to find one of those examples, but it's hard to do.
So one in town would be our new public safety building, which would be 32 Cordoville or 36, depending on.
32 Porterville?
Cordoville, like a cord of wood.
Oh.
DAVILLE.
What's the zip?
01772.
That's another thing I should let people know is when you're doing any sort of address search, if you just put in the street number, the street name, and then the zip code, it usually will find it. Of course, didn't find that. Porterville, was it street?
Road.
Still didn't
Might
find
be able to try 36.
Nope, still didn't find it. So this is using a Google search engine that that didn't find it. But anyway, let me tell you how we do these updates. As I had mentioned, we do a lot of work for the state 911 department. We have a whole team, about a dozen people. All they do all day long is to find new addresses. Earlier, one of the first things I looked at, there were a lot of what we call zero addresses in town. That means it's a parcel that has been undeveloped. So the building department or the assessor or the clerk, it really depends from town to town, who assigns the address to a parcel that's going to be developed. But until that gets developed, it's usually a zero address on that street. Anyway, the team intakes information directly from cities and towns about new addresses. So as I had mentioned, 911 has these requirements of cities and towns in order to get the grants. One is to update the parcel data annually. The other is, as new addresses are adopted, information has to be sent to us. And then that team of people that we have goes out and tries to find these addresses. I thought I had spotted one. Oh, there's one. So here's an instance where it looks like, yeah, I mean, it's even apparent in the ortho photo that this is a new building, just because of, there's not a lot of growth and whatnot. Actually, maybe it's not. For some reason, the structures I'm drawing. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so here's a new building that we haven't picked up yet. if the town had sent our 911 team this new address, the 911 team would go out with this new aerial photo, and they would actually sit there and do what we call digitize the building outline. This isn't exactly, this is just sort of a mock-up of what they would do. But they would actually draw and add in that building outline to the structures data set. When this was initially done, it was all done using computers. We paid a company to actually, they can analyze the aerial photograph and find the structures. But now when we do updates, we do that manually. So long-winded way of saying I don't want to say it's a catch-as-catch-can thing, because we have people in the office who actually, do these updates. But with 351 cities and towns, many of them sort of high growth towns like Plymouth, Franklin. I'm not sure what the growth rate in Southborough is, but they do it sort of in a, they do it town by town. So, I can't tell you exactly when, they might come and pick up this new building here, or this newer building. Actually, it might be interesting to know what that building.
And I'll also add on the town side, our GIS layers get updated. The assessors start to update it when the plan has been recorded at the registry, but it might take a year or so for the actual public maps on People GIS to be reflective of that change. So that also does take time in regards of, it has to do with billing cycles and calendar years and things like that. So there's usually somewhat of a delay on the town side as well.
Yeah, it's, there's always a lag with this stuff. With such a big state, with so many different data layers, it's hard to keep everything up to date to the moment. And as Melissa mentioned, when it comes to the parcel data, that's an annual update that we get, whereas the town might do it, immediately. For instance, the city of Boston, we kind of get it like a live feed from them. So we get updates that are relatively frequent updates. I know I haven't answered people's questions specifically, but I hope I'm making a good attempt anyway. Were there other questions, Melissa?
None that I see.
Okay. Let's see, what else should I show you? Well, I do want to go back to the Muni Mapper only because we made this so that the assessors could have an abutters list. Oftentimes, well, I shouldn't say oftentimes, but virtually every time that somebody wants to build on a parcel or maybe add an addition or whatever, they have to notify the abutters so that they, might want to weigh in with the planning board or whomever with any concerns they might have. So anyway, we made this this buffer tool here, and I guess in most towns, and again, I work for the state, so I don't really know a lot about what goes on in towns, but it might be sort of a 500-foot a butters list that you need. So 500 feet from a particular property. And so let's say that the people in this particular, let me find one that's going to be a little more interesting. In this particular property want to, or let's say this property wants to get developed. So we've got to send out a notification to all the abutters within 500 feet. So I had set that 500 feet, and now I'm just going to click on this parcel. Whoops. Okay, so this is the subject parcel. And what it did is you can see this little dashed line here that goes around. What it did was it grabbed every parcel that touches that 500-foot buffer. And here's the list. And so I could save the records as an Excel. So I could export it down, click here to download your file. And there it is over there. And then I could use that to do maybe a mail merge where I'm going to send out information about that property development to all of the abutters. I'm not sure if the People GIS tool has that abutters list or not. As you can well imagine, in the past, before any sort of electronic mapping, the assessor used to have to get out their paper maps and a ruler and, then draw, some sort of circle or radius around the subject parcel, get all the parcel ID numbers, and then go into their database, be it a book, a paper book, or whatever, and then record all of those addresses and, send out the abutters list. So something that might take someone hours before now really just takes minutes. Any other questions?
I'm not seeing any in the chat, so if anyone has anything, please feel free to raise your hand or type it in now.
Well, let me show you some of the layers that we have in our library. Again, data layers, maps, data. I use that term all interchangeably. Remember when I was in Oliver and I right-clicked to get the metadata about the open space? This is where it came from. So these are sort of the top level categories that we've crunched everything into, but I'll just scroll through. So we have census data going back to 1990, and we'll have the 2020 census data here when that comes out. I guess most of these wouldn't really be of interest to you folks in Southborough, but we have a lot of coastal and marine features. One thing to keep in mind with all of our data is that virtually all of it comes from other places, other agencies. Many of these coastal and marine features come from the Coastal Zone Management or other federal sources. Conservation and recreation, here are all the different layers that you would see there. Again, the protected open space and recreation data layer. Just because I like to gab, I should mention that when I first started at MassGIS 25 years ago, that was the first project that I worked on. I was hired as a contractor to drive to probably about 40 different cities and towns over the course of a year to do the research to help develop the protected open space and recreation data layer. And I'd have to sit there in the assessor's office and again, go through their paper books, and then their paper maps and draw sketches to help create that protected open space data layer. And what we've done now, or I shouldn't say we, because this one is maintained by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs now, is now they've corrected a lot of that data to the assessor parcel data that we now have, which we did not have in electronic format 25 years ago when we started that project. Again, the endangered species habitat, all of this data comes from the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. This mass historic inventory is a really interesting one. And again, you can view this data in Oliver. It has all of the historic points in towns, be it a historic homestead, some sort of historic building. It also has historic districts throughout the Commonwealth. Environmental monitoring, a lot of this stuff comes from DEP. The image data. So since the 1990s, we have either paid ourselves or got a consortium of state agencies to help pay for aerial photos. Or in some cases, we've worked with the US GIS, which was the case for the 2019. I want to just quickly show you, I hope this, where is it? Well, no, I'm actually not going to show that to you. So anyway, over the years, we have this imagery. Actually, I think it would be a good idea to show this to you. Here. I should have had this queued up as a link. Yeah, okay, so this is something that, again, I worked on at the beginning of the pandemic. ESRI, which is kind of the Microsoft of GIS software, has created what they call story maps. So I created this story map about our orthophotos or aerial images through time. And it allows you to sort of investigate all of the orthophotos over time. I started with this one, which was from the 1990s. This one was actually 1995. I think Southborough, looking at this, would have been either 1997 or 1992 over in this vicinity. But I started with this one because it shows the central artery before the big dig. And then it goes through all the other different years. 2001, down in Plymouth, Kingston Carver area, they were building the new Route 44, which is one of the newer highways in the state. And then the 2005, again, it shows you sort of the road bed, but before it came in. But anyway, this story map allows you to look at all of the imagery that we have over the years. And then this last map has all of the years in it, and you can check them on and off. So you could go to one very specific area. For instance, I live over in this neighborhood here in Dorchester, but I can go to Columbia Point and see that, in the 1990s, they did have the JFK Library there in the archives building, but there's been a lot of other building that has happened over there, over time. If I turn off the black and white And then the next one is the 2001. And you can see that the 2005, a newer building appears. That wasn't there in 2001. So this is good if you want to investigate a particular area over time and see what the aerial photography looked like. And again, this is the most recent one. So I got on that by showing you all of the different data layers, which I will go back to. So those are the images. We also have the USGS topographic maps as a layer. We have different elevation data. These are indexes. They're not really data in and of themselves. They're just indexes to show different tiles of data. Infrastructure, we have all the airports in the state, you know, all of these other different things. There's no reason for me to read them off when you can look at them yourselves, but all of these map layers or data layers exist. And for instance, this acute care hospitals, this has been useful lately with the pandemic. MEMA and Department of Public Health has been doing a lot of mapping. I'm sure you all saw that what we were calling the stoplight map, the town by town red, green, yellow, or gray map. We were making that up until a few weeks ago, but then the DPH decided for whatever reason they were going to use different metrics and they weren't going to use that map. But this hospital layer is used, you know, for the pandemic planning. And again, all of these different data layers are available for viewing in Oliver. You know, I realize most of you probably only work within, you know, your town, Southborough, although many of you may not live in Southborough, or some of you may not live in Southborough. But here are other layers. I shouldn't say recently, but within the past couple of years, we published a new land cover land use map, again, available in Oliver. That was a hybrid. It was done by using sort of the same analysis that we used to do the structures. I had mentioned to you that there was sort of computer algorithms that were able to pull the structures out of the aerial imagery. There are also algorithms that can pull out different land uses from the imagery because different features in the imagery send off different spectral you know, colors, if you will. But then it was also married with the land use codes that are found in the assessor parcel data. Soils is another one that gets a lot of play. Again, more elevation stuff. Hydrography, so wetlands, that's a big one. DEP wetlands. DEP does wetlands change tracking by using newer ortho photos. So they'll take the last rendition of ortho photos where they created wetlands, and then they'll take the newest rendition of ortho photos, the 2019, and again, using that spectral imagery, they can figure out where wetlands may have changed. Most of wetlands changes are where people might have filled them in. This section is very popular here, political administrative boundaries. We have all of these different types of boundaries. One of the more useful ones is legislative districts, so be it the House or the Senate. Again, those are all available in Oliver. Some of the limitations to Oliver is that you don't have a full GIS suite of software. So in my GIS software that I have on my desktop, I could add in the Senate legislative districts, and I could tell your state senator how many acres there are of protected open space in his or her district. Or I could tell them the total property values in their district by using the assessor parcel data and the field of the property value, and then the outline of their legislative district to sort of be a cookie cutter into that parcel data. I know I'm talking, this is all esoteric, but it's all things that can be done. Public school districts. We have all the districts as well as the schools. And there's a code in that data that the Department of Education, or DESE, uses to identify either each district or each school. And then they also publish reams and reams of data about the school lunch program, the MCAS, all sorts of other things. And those tables, those reams of data can be then linked to the GIS data, and then you can do all sorts of analysis in the maps using that other data. Another one that people like is wards and precincts. You can do some some election mapping once you have the results to link to the wards and precincts data. Anyway, are there any more questions, Melissa?
There are two questions. So the first one is, my street, Davis Road, is incorrectly represented in OpenStreetMaps and in a number of derived maps using Google Maps. One side of the divided road is labeled Davis and the other is labeled Ashley Road. This confuses any delivery service using maps derived from this incorrect information. So where is the best point of leverage to get this corrected?
This has been one of the biggest banes of providing information online to people. And I get this inquiry probably once a month, be it this specific type of thing, or somebody's moved on to a new street and for whatever reason it hasn't made it into the databases yet, and the delivery drivers or whoever can't find that address. So keep in mind that there are commercial address and street companies out there, Google being one of them, another one called TeleAtlas, Navtech, but these are commercial companies who provide data to all of these, delivery or Uber or whoever, people who need to know where streets and addresses are. Most of those commercial companies download our data for free and then turn around and sell it to these other companies. But that doesn't answer your question. Let me find the answer to your question on our website. Let me get back to the MassGIS website, because there is a tool that I need to show you. Okay, and let me try to remember where this tool is. It is here. So under this interactive maps and streaming web services on our website, under view single topic interactive maps. Oh, wait a minute, it was back here too. It's here, but it was also back here. Tell MassDOT about an error that is in the roads maps you see on our website. So if you click there, this is the road inventory error reporter for MassDOT. So while we collect addresses for the purposes of 911. The entity or agency that it's really in charge of the roads is MassDOT. So this particular reporting tool, which they call Roadie, and hopefully you can see the URL here. Maybe I'll try to.
I did put it in the chat.
Oh, you
so
put it in the
people
chat,
can click
right.
on it. Yep.
Like I said, I don't use Zoom, so I'm just sort of pecking around here looking for things. But this will allow you to make that report. You would start out just like with any mapping tool. You use this search feature. I would type in your own address. I'm going to type in mine just because that's the only one I know, and you get this type ahead feature. So I'm going to click there, and maybe I'll go to one of my other neighbors. So for instance, maybe this road is not, is incorrect. So we want to go to this, here's the instructions here. So it says zoom to an address and then click on a road to get its current attributes. So I'm going to click there and it tells me that this is the name of the road. And maybe this is really the person's driveway to that last house. The road ends here. And I want to report an issue. And here's where I can put in, you can put in the attribute. That was the specific issue that the question was. It was the attribute of this street. So you would put in attribute, and then down here you would type in that there is a discrepancy on this road where one side of the road is called this and the other side is called that. So you would report this to MassDOT. So hopefully that answers the question for that person. And I'm so glad that they came out with this tool. This is less than a year old because this really helped me when I would have people contacting me about the fact that they can't, that the delivery drivers can't find their house, or oftentimes, like this little example I used here, there's a road that continues into someone's property, but it's really their driveway, but it's labeled as a road. And for whatever reason, they're upset about that and want to see that change. So this reporting tool allows you to do that. What was the other question, Melissa?
The other question is there a data layer index for Oliver, PeopleGIS, and other available mapping systems showing all existing data layers, including those that are available to the public, to town staff, law enforcement, or to others?
Well, I can't speak for those other mapping tools, but the map or the list that I just showed you for MassGIS, this is the list. I would recommend that before you start using Oliver, if you want to use Oliver just as something to experiment with, that you first come here and look at all of the available data layers that we have. I mean, this is our list. As far as I know, there's nothing more in Oliver than what you see here. And all of these should be in Oliver. And then again, you might want to find out what is this thing about before I start adding it into Oliver. And it will, again, tell you, or, again, in Oliver, you can just start adding things in. And then again, right click on them here, view metadata, and it brings you to that page that, again, I was showing you that you could link to from that list. And one good thing, or one thing to keep in mind with Oliver, if you're done with a layer, don't just uncheck it. You can right-click it and remove it. We didn't see any of those in the area, so I'm just going to remove it. You can also reorder things and bring things up to the top or down below other things. You can change colors of things, but I'd be careful using that. So there is no comprehensive list of all of those different mapping softwares, but I can tell you for us, that one, that whole list is, I can't get back to it now, is our list of our data layers. Other questions?
I don't see any more.
Okay, so pardon the pun, but sorry I was a little all over the map today, but I did want to just show you what's out there. And, happy to take any other questions.
I am not seeing any, but if anyone has questions after this webinar, feel free to, send me an email. I can forward it off to Paul or, help to mitigate any questions that I can answer on the town side. So if you have questions about the People GIS and the town's available layers, feel free to reach out to me and we will work on that as much as possible. But otherwise, thank you, Paul, so much for joining us, and thank you everyone for attending. We have our second session at 2 p.m. today about GIS in the private sector. If you haven't registered, there's still time. But thank you again, and I hope everyone has, learned about our resources that we have available to us, both from the state and the town side.
Melissa, I just wanted to mention to folks, if you ever want to send me an email, paul.nutting@mass.gov. And I'm happy to answer people. I'm happy to talk on the phone and talk people through things. So happy GIS Day, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Everyone have an awesome day. Thank you, Paul, again. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.